Yep.
Is that okay with everyone that we're recording?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Just because I don't want to take notes. I find it a pain. I'd rather listen back after.
Yeah.
But of course, I just missed what you said, but I think I have it in my head. Edwin?
I was hearing his saying decision-making process. So how do we make decisions, right? In terms of the topic. So you're asking me for like my views on this, on the framing of the.
Yeah.
Yeah, I in terms of being just political, there's a kind of a broader social building a culture of empathy, which includes personal and interpersonal and political. So it's sort of the totality of how do we create a culture of empathy. So politics is definitely a big part of it. Having something that's very encompassing, all encompassing seems important. I mean, it is an overall framing, so we can step into any experience and incorporate and speak to that. So we can talk to, the relational, we can talk to a family, it's empathy within a family or empathy within a school or empathy in the whole larger, the country or in the world. So something that's encompassing enough, like, for example, nonviolent communication, they talk about its feelings and needs, right? Like everybody's trying to just fulfill their needs. So it has a underlying broad, inclusive view, framing.
Okay.
Reflect that, what you're understanding?
I mean, I think you're agreeing essentially. To me, that sounds like you're agreeing with the way Lou is looking at it. I mean, I wasn't trying to say that I only want to talk about politics. That's not really what I was trying to say. But I want to make it clear that that's something we're focused on also.
Right now, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
It's certainly a hot topic.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's the way for us to, to me, I mean, to use an aggressive military term, I think it's the tip of the spear as far as us getting, some momentum would be to figure out how to engage in the right place and actually accomplish something would make would be bigger than anything else we could do. I mean, I know it's ambitious, but, part of what I started with was how are we framing what we're doing for George Packer if he gets to us. And I think that, that's what somebody like he is interested in, is polarization and what to do about it. And I think that's a huge, it's huge. It's bigger than anything else we're dealing with in some sense. It encompasses every problem that we want to solve. So that's all. So, I guess it's how are we going to craft this in a way where we're not overemphasizing one thing or another, but it all, comes together in a way that feels right. I guess that's our task. So let's talk about, does anybody want to add anything, Bill or Terry, before we maybe talk about our decision-making process?
Well, yeah, I take a different, I mean, I'm not disagreeing about the political or getting in charge of George Packer, but as I've said before, maybe unempathetically, I don't give a shit. Empathy is the experience of empathy is its own powerful thing. And so I'm really interested in what Bob did. And, I asked him, I said, did you have a good time? He said, yeah, I had a great time. It was good. The revolution, when you talk to somebody in an empathetic manner and that the revolution has come. You've created that reality. And so I think that we need to encourage people to do things. I think one way is the kind of the mini empathy tent, just to keep a low bar. Not necessarily I'm against the big empathy tent or anything like that. Either way, what would work, but to lower the bar for people to engage. And then a tent is not the only thing either. But so therefore, when these people do talk to us, we say, well, yeah, we got people going out and doing this. In other words, we have a constituency. And we have people who have done it, and people can, interview them without any kind of coaching from us, and like to Bob, and he would say, yeah, I had a great time. It was great. I was empathetic. I created an empathetic society right there, right now. And so then I think we need to highlight those people. We need to, just like in special ed, really make that big and vivid, and then bring that out. Then I think going forward, that peels in. So when a guy like a politician says, oh, what are you guys? I mean, we got 5 people here, so, you say, well, we have these people who are doing these particular things. And I think that gives us legitimacy when we go to the politicians or the philosophers or the professors. So I see that as very important, working hand in hand. If we're just saying, hey, we have a great idea and this is who we are, we're sort of at the whim of them. And I really want to focus on the experience of empathy and how important that is. And I think I trust empathy. I think that people will basically say, yeah, no, it's good. It's helpful. So I see the kind of the small interaction as feeding into the larger one. And as far as politics is concerned, I agree, we should stay empathetic, but I don't think we should shy away when people are talking about, for instance, deporting people and doing horrible things. Yeah, is that empathetic? I think we've got to honestly say no.
So I'll just reflect the most basic kernel of the way I would characterize what you just said.
Sure.
Which is that I think you're talking about a grassroots empathy movement.
Yes.
In what I understand grassroots movement to be. Mm-hmm. And so for the purposes of our discussion, that's what I would call that.
Sure, that's fine.
Okay.
And
I'm not advocating. I mean, Edwin and I have been doing that. That's what we've been doing. So sure. I'm all for that. It's not. That's obviously. I'm all for everything you said.
And I just want to add what Bill's description made me remember is that I think the Empathy Tent website should feature whatever work is going on with the Empathy Tent that different people are doing. Mm-hmm. So if people are working in politics, they're going into political rallies and putting up the tent and asking people to engage in dialogue, that should be on the site. And if people are going and putting up the Empathy Tent at a county fair and just providing listening to people because they're trying to create a culture of empathy and understanding with no particular agenda, that's another application of trying to create a culture of empathy, and that should be featured on the site. So whatever people are involved in and whatever we have to report about how this process has been used, that should be on there so that people see there's a variety of kind of ways in which it can be applied. And that might be true for online circles, not just the Empathy Tent, but online circles and face-to-face circles as well.
Okay, that sounds good. I mean, Edwin's been doing that in his site, but we could have, I think the way we'd want to do that from my point of view is we'd have one tab where that was happening. Everything that was happening would be in and be separate from what was on the first page and stuff. So that's great. I feel like this is all great, what I'm hearing here. It sounds like some crystallization is actually happening, feels like to me. Barry, anything to say?
Well, on this website, Bill mentioned something like, didn't say the word credibility, but something like it, right, Bill?
Yes, yeah, I think that's fair, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that we need to sort of take an inventory of, where the empathy tent has been, and, it's been in politics with, these state assemblymen or congressmen. It's soon going to be in my practice with teenagers and college students. It's on the street for whatever purpose it serves, generally politics.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, what am I saying with all that? So the credibility is, we've been on the street, we've been to Sacramento, we've been at large rallies in LA, we've been in civil strife in Berkeley, and we've been on the Cal campus and have done training with a congressman. I mean, that's a lot of, that has that's a broad stroke right now, that I think adds up to some credibility and the categories that we have going. So that needs to be said on the site, and what each one of those experiences, that we've had have been. Yeah, that's all I have to say for right now.
Okay, so you're talking about that, and that sounds to me like that section could also be linked with the news articles that have been written about us, and that's a kind of, that authenticate what we're doing.
Yeah, right.
And I have just another suggestion. I thought it could be that we can sort of have on the site some sort of online listening thing. So, I would say, okay, Tuesday night at 7:00, I'll go on, and then people could actually connect with someone who volunteered to do this. And so therefore could actually interact with someone in an empathetic manner. So we just wouldn't be limited to taking, going out in real time and taking the empathy tent, but people could then talk to somebody and get a taste of it, in real time.
Okay, that's a great idea. Sounds like
Sidewalk Talk had just added. Sorry, you're cut you off there, Dave. But Sidewalk Talk had just added listening training for $29 that they do. I mean, there's two things. One is just offering listening, and the other is training people on how to do listening, and they're having an online training offered too.
Yeah, I don't think they're mutually exclusive. We can just listen with no fee, and then if people want to come on and take a training in order to be a listener in the following the precepts of the empathy tent, then they could pay a training fee.
Mm-hmm.
Well, also, I mean, if for the grassroots empathy movement, I mean, Bob has the first replicant tent, and I think that's what we, you've talked about that, the toolkit. I mean, we'd want to have a whole package, for replicants, where we teach them how to do and facilitate and do everything. And maybe, that would be something, there could be a package, small package fee where we,
Right.
Assist or, doing that. So, okay. Should we move to a discussion of how we're going to make decisions about what the actual language is and all that, or?
Sure.
I mean, yeah?
Okay, sure.
And whoever wants the floor should take it.
So the decision-making models I can imagine are, Edwin has the last say because he started this thing and he's been doing the culture of empathy thing a very long time. It could be a consensus, it could be a majority model where just the majority of us vote. And it could be a consensus model where we don't do anything unless all of us agree.
Could there be, could we organize it so that we try to all agree, but if we can't, we move to a majority, and if we still are uncomfortable, either Edwin decides or we have to do. I mean, I think, if things get contentious, we obviously should use our practice to try to resolve it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to have it be so watered down because we're seeking consensus that it gets mushy.
I agree.
I think that's a concern, potentially anyway, of mine.
Mm-hmm.
So does that make sense? Consensus if possible, majority if there's a clear majority, number 2, and Edwin has the last word if necessary.
I'm fine with that.
That's okay.
Yeah, and I would say with the consensus is that if there's kind of a difference, that it gets worked out with empathic listening. Because that's kind of the learning aspect of it, right? It's like that's where the energy is kind of working it through to ideally to consensus, or having a circle around it.
Okay.
I'm okay with that.
Okay. That works for me.
So, I mean, the rest of you guys can fill out your answers to all these questions that haven't done that. But, I mean, what's the first thing that we need to tackle as a group? What would you say? Would it be why, or what would you say? What is a culture of empathy? What is it we are doing? I mean, what is the first question that we need to try to coalesce around a text for?
I find that a definition, I mean, I'm not against the definition, but a definition is really difficult. And you can get into how many angels are dancing on the head of a pin by trying to do that. I would suggest that we talk about the experience that we've all experienced when we listen empathetically, our lives are better. And that might fit into our personal bios. And this is how it has affected us. And that, it gives people a concrete example of how it works in life for us, and then opens the door for them.
Okay. But that doesn't solve our mission statement. I feel like we need a mission statement.
Well, to build a culture of empathy.
Which is?
Well, I think that there are certain, I mean, I did that. I mean, that's what, I mean, Lou does it. I mean, I'm not the only person, but in my class, it was like all hell breaks loose. And that was the only way to get out of that, is to build a culture of empathy. It includes structure, like what is empathy? Like hitting a person in the face is not empathy. And then, really focusing on people's positive communication skills and appreciating them and encouraging them.
Okay.
That's the way we did it.
So
go ahead.
I'm just sort of moving ahead a little bit in the sense of thinking. So could we say our mission is to foster a culture of empathy, which we then need to define in some sense, and we are doing it by doing X, Y, Z.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we need to coalesce around, the first thing we need to coalesce around is, what is a culture of empathy in some form that we're comfortable with? It doesn't get us tied down arguing over how many angels can dance on the head of a pin, but that say what we feel we need to say. Yeah?
Yeah. So what came up to me, just one word that's very important, is people need to feel safe. If you don't feel safe, then you don't feel safe communicating. And so first the issue, I mean, that's what I created in the classroom with all of this. Safety first. And so I think that's a big part. People need to feel safe. When the ACL argued for the Nazis, They weren't about free speech. If I'm going to, hit you over the head or drive a car into you, that's not about free speech. So I think what the ACL missed in that sense is a sense of safety. If you're going to, we advocate free speech, so you should do free speech. So let's, leave the weapons at home.
Okay. Lou?
So, from my point of view, and I guess this is more like process, from a matter of process, I think that if we take the questions that are on the sheet, and we could do all the questions, or we could just do my questions, or we could do my questions plus whatever questions people think are important that are not in there. And I think we either have a person draft answers to those questions, or maybe if that's too much for one person to do, the questions could be assigned to different people, and the task would be for one person for all of them, or if they're assigned, the assignment is come up with a draft for the website of what would be the answer to this question, keeping in mind that the purpose of answering it is that it's going to go on the website, and this is what people are going to read when they come and they want to know. So what is a culture of empathy, or what is the purpose of the site? And then those drafts are reviewed by others, and comments are made, or we can have a discussion about them, or we can add to them online. And that would be the process by which we would develop the text that would go onto the website. And then the question of which text would go where, I think once we have all the text developed, then we could have a discussion about, so which text should go where. What should be on the homepage? What should be on a tab? What should the tabs be? How should the information be organized?
Okay. I mean, I feel that your questions are not so difficult to answer. They're more sort of how-tos, and they're pretty, where is the empathy tent used? They're more specific than the questions I was asking. I was sort of my questions were sort of all around what is our mission statement, and how are we conceptually refining what we're thinking about. And I mean, one way we could divide these, so, that I feel like everything has to work underneath that somehow for me. Like when I come to the tent, when I come there, I mean, we have to somehow say what we're trying to do. I mean, Edwin wants to define a culture of empathy, I think, in some way. So maybe we should, Edwin should work with whoever wants to work on that with him, and everybody else can chime in, and we'll take what's been written. And, Edwin should focus on that. I mean, I think Terry was going to do that too.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we all want to participate in that, but maybe since Edwin's put the most, the biggest piece of his life in all of this, you need to work with some of us to sort of flesh this out. What is a culture of empathy?
Mm-hmm. So I have a series of questions. Everyone takes a question, sort of leads the writing of that, and I could take the culture of empathy question and lead a discussion and flesh out the text around that. And so
I think that's that's the most difficult thing we have to do. That's my sense.
And maybe we should give people like a word limit. And I'm not sure how much that would be, 200 words, 300 words. With the idea being, we're not trying to write a position paper.
Right.
We're trying to provide information on the website for people, just enough so that they understand.
And is the suggestion that we'll all write 200 words on what a culture of empathy means to each one of us? Or is Edwin going to work on that from his own point of view? And then we will, with Terry or me or whoever we do that with, and then we will all add what we think is missing? I mean, how do we want to do that?
You know, we're making a decision here. Is everybody writing on all the questions, or are we splitting up the questions and individuals are drafting things? In either case, we're all going to review what's there because we're all interested in what it actually says, and we're providing a check for each other on understanding and clarity and stuff like that. So I think my personal opinion is it's better to split the questions up and let people draft things on that question, and then people can review it and add it or add comments or something like that. I just think that's efficient, because then one person isn't saddled with all the work.
Right.
Okay.
You know.
That works for me.
Okay.
Okay.
Everybody else? That makes sense?
Yep.
So how are we going to divide up the questions, and what questions are we going to deal with? I mean, you know, I guess my questions all fit, or what is the problem we're trying to address, or why have you chosen this, and what is the purpose of the empathy tent? Those are all the same question in some sense. That Edwin is going to lead up, right? Is that right?
I'm a little unclear. Is that there's two sets of questions here? There's Lou's questions and.
Well, I felt that Lou's questions were more specific. Well, I mean, you can answer them either, you know, that it doesn't matter, but I mean, one of them is the mission statement, right? I mean, we're going to have a tab that is like what is our mission? We're going to have to have that.
Yeah, I mean, that's usually in an about tab.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
yeah, my question 7, which is, who are the people started this and what is their purpose? That question kind of covers the purpose question. And you also have questions about that too.
Right. But so let's do this. Could we say, what is the question that Edwin is answering?
Say that again, Dave.
Yeah.
What is the question that Edwin is specifically focused on leading the answer to?
I don't know. I kind of see, you know, us writing it, and we kind of bring things together. I think that we'll see some sort of themes just from the, you know, repeated in our answers. And then I think that, you know, we go by our decision-making consent and then go, and then obviously overall Edwin, you know, shapes it down and has the last word.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll help you, Edwin.
So we're talking about here the one question is what is a culture of empathy? Is that what, and then kind of that was the question I was taking on, and then everybody was going to take on a different question, and we're kind of focusing, I'm trying to get clarity here, but I'm focusing on what is a culture of empathy. And Terry will help with that. So we'll write up something and then present it and then talk about it.
Yeah.
Or review it. Is that right?
I mean, in some sense we have two questions. What is a culture of empathy, and how are we trying to implement this culture?
Mm-hmm.
And everything, you know, everything else goes under number 2, essentially. You know, our tent, what it does, how we do it, where we take it, all that stuff is under the how we're trying to do this. Does that make sense as a conceptual breakdown?
Well,
Yeah.
I think there's more to it than that. So you're talking about, you're saying the question of why are we doing this, which is because we're trying to create a larger culture of empathy. That's one question. And then the question of how are we doing it, that would cover what is an empathy tent, what is an empathy circle.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, can we split it that way as a framework for dividing up the work in some sense.
No, because I don't think there are only two questions.
Well, but I mean, the questions under number 2 come a whole bunch of questions. Under each framework, under each one of those questions, there's a whole bunch of questions. I mean,
Right.
just trying to divide up two pieces of work in some sense. That, just conceptually from a simple conceptual framework.
Well, I've been traveling, so I haven't really looked or delved into the questions. But as I understand it, we have the overall questions with Edwin and Terrence, kind of what is a culture of empathy. And then I would suggest we just for the sake of, getting on with it, then divide up those other questions. I think that how do you do a culture of empathy is a very, a valid and complex question. And then go and then see how that, once we answer that and we have the material and we start the editing process, then we can decide, maybe how to categorize it with, with it's fleshed out. In other words, we have content.
Okay. I mean, I wasn't trying to change what's been done already. I was just trying to sweep these questions into a couple groups or something, but.
Okay.
But,
yeah, except, so I think that's not a good instinct, because what we want to do is break down. We don't want to gather together. It's important to break down the questions and answer them specifically. And then we can decide how the information needs to be organized so that people are finding what they want.
okay.
The instinct to kind of gather it all together is the opposite of what we should be doing. We should be breaking it down and define. And so and I also think, because, we could write a book on this, that, there are a million questions that could be asked, and there's a lot of writing that could be done. And so I think it's really important that the writing be driven by the questions that we think are in the minds of the user that comes to the website. Again, someone hears about the empathy tent from somebody, or this thing, empathy circles, and they want to find out what it is. So they come to the website. What are the questions that are in their mind?
Mm-hmm.
So what is an empathy tent? What is an empathy circle?
Right. Okay. So I'm just confused, though. We agreed we were going to divide up the work, but it sounds like we're all going to do everything. I'm just confused.
No, I'm saying, so who's going to write what is an empathy tent? Who's going to write what is an empathy circle? Who's going to write the question of who are the people that are doing this, that are behind this? Each of us writes our own bio on that.
Right.
We want to say, the question of who is doing this. There's also the sub question of this is part of a larger thing of trying to build a culture of empathy. So it's who's going to write the piece on what is a culture of empathy.
I mean,
so that's how I see it.
I would like to go after the difficult stuff first as a group. So in other words, how can I make my own empathy tent? How can I visit an empathy tent? That stuff's not complicated, and I think could be left for later, personally.
Okay. I don't know how complicated it is. I haven't tried to draft it yet, so I would have not one sentence. I mean, it's, that's not an easy, how do I participate? I don't know. I got to think about that. Do we have schedules? Do we have do we have a thing where we invite people to go in? Do we have a calendar of events? I don't know what we have. It's an interesting question.
Well, I think that speaks to what I forgot who said that was talking about, engaging and going out, and or the events. Somebody said listing the various events, the political events or something like that, and then on the website people can then participate in some way. I also wonder, I don't know, might be a little bit too broad, but you also consider linking with other groups like Sidewalk Talk or Indivisible and things like that, which would, just say, hey, we're not the only, here's empathy, it's open, it's, see what, bring it back and, and work and collaborate.
Okay.
So one thing I was looking is, it seems like we've got like a what is a culture of empathy, why, how, and who, sort of a what, why, and how, and who, sort of a framing, like people are going to have a question, right? They're going to come, what I was hearing Lou saying is people have a question. You have a question when you come to the site, and you're going to wonder, like, what is this? What is a culture of empathy, and why have this? And that's what I think I hear Dave always talking about, the why, the problems, and then the how, all the different pieces, and then who we are. Is that, I don't know, is that, am I seeing a yes from Terry?
I tried to capture the questions that I thought were there in the ones that I wrote. And Dave had questions in his mind. Those are the ones he wrote. So I just think we should take those questions and try to answer them. If people have other questions that they think are important, then we should add those and try to answer them too. After we have all the answers, we can talk about how do we want to organize the information.
Oh, I see. So it's kind of like people are going to be coming to the tent, and then they'll be having these questions, I'm not the tent, to the website, and then I'll have these questions, and these are questions that you're seeing that they would be having, and then we're sort of like approaching it that way.
When I put myself in the role of a person that didn't know anything about this, and somebody told me about it or sent me a link, and I went to the website and I said, if I were coming, what would I be? Questions would be in my mind. That's how I came up with the questions that I wrote.
That makes sense. So we're really trying to think of the users as they arrive, and what's their frame of reference, and what are they wanting to do, and trying to empathize with people hitting the website, and how do we really hear.
And starting with the questions that would be uppermost in their mind. Now, maybe I've guessed the wrong ones, or maybe, if other people did that same thing, imagine that you don't know anything about it and you come to a website, what questions would you have? There may be other ones that people have. And I said this before, a couple other people got on the call. I need to leave because I have another meeting.
Oh yeah, you're a couple minutes over.
So I'm sorry to kind of jump out in the middle here, but
okay.
So feel free to assign me one or two questions if you want, and I will be happy to write on them. And I am working on the video stuff, so I started to look at what I had from before, and I asked Edwin, and he sent me the link to all the recordings that we have so far, and I'll be looking through there to see if I think there are recordings or pieces of recordings that we should use, and also think about, do we want to just set up a session to do a recording that would be a training recording. So that's what I'm doing on that front now.
Maybe you should just really focus on that stuff and not do much writing.
Well, and if you guys want me to address a question or two, I'm happy to do that.
Okay.
Okay? All right. Bye.
Bye, Lou. Take care. Oh, I'm bigger now.
Me too.
All of us.
We're too old for this.
To me, we're just, in a way, it doesn't really matter whether it's what, why, how, and who, or however Lou wants to think of it. I mean, it doesn't matter. I'm willing to, help. I mean, Terry and you guys I think we need to work on that mission statement. I think that's our most difficult task by far. And, defining what the culture of empathy is in a way, writing that out, what our mission is, what we're doing, not how we're doing it, but why we're doing what we're doing is our most difficult task. To me, that's the one where there's, that I think is going to be the hardest. And once we do that, I think everything else will fall into place much more easily. That's my sense. I don't know what you guys think, but I think that's what we have to focus on.
Well, I think, it's all, we're all kind of exploring. I think that the answer to that, though, is not really specific as much as process-oriented. It's a way of how you deal with things. And so therefore, I think that, again, refining or, getting to, it's a process.
Right, but we have to say, what, we have to say some things. We can't just say it's a process of,
No, we have to do a little bit more than that.
and we have to say,
That would be nice.
we have to say it's in some sense in contrast to a lot of stuff that's happening out there, and so we want to, be as clear as possible about what it is somehow, and so, look, I think we should just try and start. We should stop talking about it. We should try and start. Let's let Edwin and Terry, I'm happy to work with you guys and whoever else. I mean, you're going to be in Death Valley this week anyway, right?
This weekend, yeah. I'll be back on Wednesday.
So, and I'm actually going to Mexico, but I can, I'm not disappearing. I will have some connection.
So Terry, maybe we could meet tomorrow. Do you have time to meet tomorrow?
Let's go to lunch.
Okay.
I'm going to take you to Saul's.
Oh no, this is. I'll take you up on it, but if we work online, then we've got the the space to work. I mean, the electronics to work on. How do we do that? That's would be my concern. Is what's the most effective?
Well, we'll go to Saul's. You'll have your laptop. I'll have mine.
Uh-huh.
And we'll just be online.
Okay. Yeah, my laptop is not. I'm not like geared. My laptop's not that great. It's so we could do the lunch and then figure it out. Take notes on paper so that or transfer it into your laptop.
Go to our house afterwards and work if you want.
Okay. So what time?
Noon.
Noon. Okay.
Yeah, 11:30 or noon. Let's do 11:30 so that the rush doesn't hit.
Okay.
And what I'll do is I'm going to take a look at some of those questions and just start writing, and we'll see where that falls in me, just to get the ball rolling.
Okay. So Edwin, you took notes here?
I took just a few.
I mean, do I have access to the recording? Because I thought there was some good stuff that came up here. And I would be willing to listen back to what happened here and try to pull out the best stuff. Because I'm not sure I remember all. I mean, usually I can remember everything and summarize it. I'll see if I can do that. But is there a way I can listen to the recording?
I would have to upload it to YouTube, which I can do.
Okay, you can do that later.
And then I'll send you the link to it.
Okay, that way I can refresh my memory if there's anything I'm unclear about. I mean, does that seem important or not? Does everybody seem to?
My one concern is we'd said each person would take a question, and I think Lou was kind of expecting that. So I just want to be sure that you take we at least hold that. So you can do both. I mean, we can approach it from both ends. The how, what, why, as well as from the questions. Does that make sense? Just to...
Right. So to me, it makes sense.
My sense is that, Bill, you really like the how, the how, like grabbing part of the how. Mm-hmm. And then, I don't know, Dave, what you're kind of into the...
Well, I'm into the why.
The why, kind of the problems area. Like, what are the problems that this is addressing?
Yeah, I'm interested in crafting, you're interested in what is a culture of empathy and defining that. And I feel, that's something you're best addressed to at least, drive that in some sense, because you have a lot to say about that. And, the real question for us with you is, how do we reduce what you have to say to its essence?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And, because you and I have had, long talks about things like the justice system. I mean, I think it should not just be, personally, it shouldn't be a book. but it should be a specific statement, for example, of what it means in the justice system, what it means in the educational system, without getting lost in the weeds at the same time, whether that's possible or not. And so I don't know. I mean, you guys will just have to do it. Then there's this question of empathy. What does it actually mean? Are we going to deal with that? There's all these questions that I think are complex, that are more complex than how do you set up an empathy tent and stuff like that I'm concerned about are the real problems we have to solve.
Oh yeah, I'm looking at Lou's list, and it's very empathy tent specific.
Right.
Yeah.
Which I feel is not as complex for us to solve, to answer those questions. That's the way I feel about it. I think the other stuff is the hard part, and that's what we should focus on personally. But I don't want, Lou to feel like he's being ignored either.
Well, can we each fill out all of Lou's questions then?
Sure.
And be sure that we can. Bob has done it, and he's the only one so far. I didn't get down to those. So
right, I didn't get to them either.
So we'll each fill those out.
So, I'm happy to work with you guys. I'm not sure I want to be in the meeting, the long meeting and stuff, but I'm happy to participate, and I'm not quite sure what I should do in a sense. I have my take. I do.
There's another kind of wrinkle to this is, my friend Rosa, she does this process called dynamic facilitation. And she takes like a question and then does sort of a facilitated brainstorming on it. And it might be interesting to have her kind of facilitate. I mean, I don't want to get too like repeating everything over again, but to kind of learn her process and to go through her facilitation process. And she's a real fan of empathy circles. She has it as a sort of a gateway process. So it's a way of kind of bringing in this brainstorming facilitation, and then she actually writes up a whole report out of it. Like it's.
I think you need to gather the material that is going to be the essence that we're going to pull from, so that we have some more to work with than we've already got. If we want to do something like that, we need to be a little further along in the process, it feels like to me, because otherwise I feel like I'm a little concerned it's just another, way of not getting at what we have to do. I'm a little concerned about that, but I'm not sure.
Yeah. What if we start with Terry and I meet tomorrow, we work on it, and I'll ask Rosa what she thinks about it and get kind of her take on it and see where we go with that, get kind of her advice on that.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's another evolution. I think that, the website could have links to like her, facilitated dynamics. And so I don't see empathetic society as necessarily being static, but actually where people are encouraged and feel good to grow and to ask questions and explore. And so, so again, that get back to that process aspect.
Yeah, to link out to all the different related. And if you look at the Empathy Circle training page, there is already links to dynamic facilitation, NVC, role playing, and all kinds of other human-centered design. So it's just a matter of porting that over to this site, and building on it too. So
cool.
I mean, I'm all for what a creative way of doing all this. I agree with all that.
Yeah, I feel kind of inadequate with,
Right, but I mean,
with the process. I don't know, I'm glad you're facilitating. I'm just like, it's great to kind of step back a little bit.
But you know, we have to pull together this vast amount of, you know, knowledge that you
Yeah.
have. We have to distill it, you know, of everybody's knowledge. We have to distill it into something concise and that's really, you know, clear and easy to understand, but profound.
Yeah, that's what we have Terry for.
Well, if you look at my responses to some of Dave's questions, and even I think yours too, Edwin, it's like Dave asked, what is the problem we're trying to address? You know, I answered these questions as in briefly as I could, and it's a really good exercise. You know, is to, like, my students have to do this when they answer questions on the application. Some of the questions are, you can only do 150 words or 200 words, and they all complain, well, how can I, you know, do that? One is like from Stanford, write a letter to your future roommate, and you have 250 words, which is not much, but when you really do whittle it down, it says exactly what you want to say to that person, and it's often very, very personal. So if you can imagine just a small space, your answer to the question of what, why, and how is going to answer, you'll automatically edit yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know, what's his name? Ralph Waldo, was it Thoreau, or can't, one of those two, said, sorry for the length of this letter. I didn't have time to make it shorter.
Well, yeah, right.
So we want that. Yeah, that's the whole art there.
Okay, well, I'm gonna just look at the questions and start, you know, we'll just get stuff out there, and then I think we'll find common themes and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Well, Terry, I think I'm gonna take that advice to heart and try to really focus on the essence of what I'm trying to care about. Yeah. So, all right.
Okay, thanks for holding this, Dave.
I'm looking forward to seeing your photos, Bill.
Sure, I will do.
Your
photos on Tinder?
Hardly, unless you're interested in naked otters.
No, but I mean the ones you take in Death Valley.
Oh, in Death Valley, yeah. No, it's true. And I do have, by the way, if you guys are interested, I do have these, I send out pictures of my various adventures. You know, it's all nature and stuff like that. So if you're interested, let me know. And then I just add you to the email list and I send them out. So.
Okay.
Okay.
That's good.
All right. I'm going to, unless there's something else.
I did have something else, sorry.
Okay, sure.
Okay, I'm just putting a link in right now to the Greater Good empathy site. They have a gateway to their empathy material, and it's just an example of how they framed it. So they framed it according to, you know, what is empathy, why practice it, and how do I cultivate it. And then they you know, they kind of really broke it down. They're kind of bringing in all the academic, they're kind of framing it around academic studies and what other academics have said. So this might be, you know, a little bit of an inspiration for how to, you know, just to consider this. So if you read through that, that might be, you know, helpful to.
Greater Good.
At UC Berkeley.
I had a quick question for Dave. You were talking about that guy who was on that you were trying to contact, I forgot his name or what?
Yeah, I haven't tried to contact with him yet. It was.
Doesn't he have a website or something?
Yeah, the website is popthebubble.org, I think.
Pop the Bubble, right? Okay.
Popthebubble.org.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Yeah, that's it. Yep.
Well, I got to go. Edwin, I'll see you tomorrow.
Okay, great. See you there.
Dave, bye. Bill, bye.
Bye.
I can stay on for a minute, Edwin, if you want.
Okay.
I'm going to leave.
All right.
Bye,
See you,
Bill. Have a great time.
You too. Thanks.
Okay. Well, thanks for kind of holding that. It feels like it takes some. I always feel a little stressed with all the facilitation, so it's nice to kind of have you hold it, and it felt good.
Yeah, you thought I did okay?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I mean, there's a certain herding cats quality to it.
Uh-huh.
You know, it's like, that's what it feels like. But it's okay as long as we somehow move ourselves forward, you know. I mean, I think, you know, Lou's doing what he needs to do. He's the one who can do that with the video stuff, and he should do that. And you know, yeah. So,
yeah, it seems good. I think Terry, good to check out, see how it works with Terry.
yeah, he's super creative.
Yeah, I've noticed that part.
Yeah. So, and I can't. Yeah, I'd like to. Yeah. So you guys do what you do, and I'm going to try again to. I'll keep thinking about the parts I think about, and try and maybe I'll spend some time looking at a bunch of websites and see how they're organized. Maybe I could probably spend a little time talking to the people who, but I don't really like their website, Union of Concerned Scientists. But anyway.
Yeah, it's a matter. It's not just having a website. It's like, you know, having sort of a magical site, you know, that as aesthetically, you know, kind of engaging. And
well, I mean, I think, you know, those photographs of us with the tent next to like 100 policemen in battle gear, you know, we have a lot of good photographs of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and yeah, how do we organize it all? I mean, we should, you know, keep it simple. Is like, if you look at that Pop the Bubble site, you look at what he's got.
Oh. Pop the Bubble.
.org.
Oh, .org.
Yeah. Why did you not do .org?
Because I thought of com, obviously.
I mean, you know, it's got one major picture, which we could argue about what that should be. But, you know, it's very simple on its face within these categories, right? And to me, I mean, you know, I don't think it needs to be, it looks nice to me. I don't think we need to, you know, once we start getting into complicated colors in the background and everything else, it starts to get to be really difficult to do a good job, actually. Like, he's got this blue, Pop the Bubble.org is, you know, in the same sort of color grouping as what the picture is, right? So it's not clashing with the picture at all. He may have even pulled the colors out of the picture, like he pulled the blue or something out. I don't know, but I'm just saying it.
Yeah.
You know, that's probably a square website, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's fairly basic.
Yeah, and I don't think you know, it's our content that counts the most. And just ease of use. So, but we don't need to worry about that now. All right.
Okay.
What are you doing the rest of the day?
Kind of catching up. You know, I got to do some grocery shopping and just catching up on emails, on calls, and yeah, that's kind of the essence of it.
Okay.
And
right.
You're leaving on Saturday, say?
I'm leaving Saturday morning. Yeah, I'll be,
Okay.
you know, getting myself organized tomorrow. We could talk about having dinner tomorrow night. I don't know what your plans are. I have to see if I'm actually going to be ready to, but I probably can.
Okay. Now, let's see, or even get a beer or something, or just kind of trying to support Joan. You know, like I was going to go somewhere tonight to one of those political endorsements, but Joan was just wanting me to be, you know, around and, you know, make dinner together. So,
okay.
You know, just try to support her.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay.
All right. Bye.
Bye.